Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another rainy Saturday morning here at the Art Clinic Online. It's great to see so many faces here that are here to enjoy our artist talk this morning. I do want to remind you all that we have such an incredible backlog of recordings from 4.5 years. I think we're around that point. Uh, I know. 4.5 years of recording. So when Mariana coaxed me into this project, I didn't actually think we would still be doing it 4.5 years later, but it is so exciting for us to every other weekend get to share and learn about so many talented DMV artists and really kind of spotlight how incredible this area is for the arts and humanities. I am so happy that Ella Sikorska is back. She was our artist last December, if I remember correctly, and her work is absolutely fantastic. So if you have not seen that recording or were not at her talk back in December, I strongly encourage you directly after this talk is over to go to the artcliniconline.com and check out our cool web page. It's looking good, and you can go check the recordings from Ella's work and so many others that are from this area. And I will actually pass the torch to her so she can introduce our artist this morning.
Thank you, Jordan. And I wanted to, before anything, I wanted to thank both of you, Mariana and Jordan, for creating this program and developing for over such a long time. I think it's really absolutely unique because it's like a database of local artists done by artists introducing themselves. So it's really unique and it's fantastic. So thank you so much. And yeah, then also short announcement. There is an exhibition of Tinam's work. There are 21 paintings in the exhibition. I believe it's still on. I'm not sure about it. Tinam will know better. But it is in the gallery at the Beltsville Community Center.
Greenbelt.
Greenbelt, sorry.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful exhibition and um, make the trip really worth it. So we, yeah, I met Tinam a pretty long time ago, and so I had a chance to really follow her development for many years, and the first thing which kind of attracted me was her medium. It's a oil painting, but she experiments with it, and I'm sure she will tell us more about it. But also, what I admire in her work is that she moves. She doesn't stay too long with one topic, or she focuses on themes. She works on it and then she introduces some new elements and moves on. But she doesn't stay kind of stagnant in one thing. So it's over the years, it has been a journey with Tinam, following her interest in her fascinations and so on. And the most, I think, interesting for me was relatively, or the latest development, which was introducing a human figure in her landscape, because as long as I know her, her art was always somehow connected to nature. And the landscape she paints is very particular landscape. And then suddenly there was a woman figure there. So it brings completely different challenge and different dimension to her vision. Anyway, I admire that she also stays somehow true to her background and her tradition, in spite of all these changes she goes through. She is recognizable Tinam with her world. So I will pass the microphone or screen to you, Tinam.
Ila, thank you so much and so perceptive. And as you know, I'm an ardent admirer of your work. So here we are, two fans. Um, well, I am also very grateful that you have the opportunity to do this, thanks to you and thanks to Jordan and Mariana. I very, very much appreciate it. And I think, well, maybe, well, in somewhere it says already where I was born and raised, right? Everybody knows, right? So I don't have to go there, I guess. But my first art education was in The Hague, the Netherlands. And then I went back to school here in the States and got a degree in visual communications. But actually, my main education to me seems to be from an art library. I worked there for a couple of years at the college, and I was exposed to so much information, so much art, and I read everything I could. I still do, actually. I can never get enough of reading about artists, how they work, or see them work. Um, so for me, the main thing came out of that art library. I worked for a while as a freelance illustrator, which I enjoyed, but it was hard to have a steady income, and at some point I needed that. I was also teaching at the same time art classes, but so I got a regular job, but I couldn't do the deadlines for the freelance illustration anymore, because if I would get an assignment from the Washington Post, well, sometimes it was only 24 hours. And sometimes, well, if I was lucky, it might have been 36, but it was tricky. So I gave that up, and I totally concentrated on fine art. And that was in 1996. So this is my little, how I came here. I want to start the whole thing with a quote by Paul Klee. And it's, art does not reproduce the visible, rather it makes visible. Okay, and now I will go to my actual page. I called it Into the Woods and Beyond, because the woods are, it's sort of a metaphor for me, for art, for making art, basically. You go into the woods and you don't know anything about it. It's mysterious. It can be enchanting. You can get lost. You can get frightened. But then also you can go farther and beyond, and then a whole new world opens. So that's why I came up with the title, but it's also literally, since I do use a lot of woods in my paintings. Okay, I wanted to start with showing some artists that were important to me, not necessarily totally influenced me, but they were very important because of mood and atmosphere in their work, which is very important to me. That might be the main thing in my work, and ambiguity. So I was, these are the artists from back then. The first is Albert Pinkham Ryder, and then Samuel Palmer, who was a British artist in the early 1800s, and Blakelock. And so they were all sort of hermits. It's sort of interesting, but I like. And then, of course, Caspar David Friedrich, the German painter. And this is interesting. Here are these chalk, how do you call it, rocks. And my grandfather on the German side actually was born there in Rügen. This is the island Rügen in northern Germany. And the frequency is a little off, because this is James Ensor, Belgian painter, and he was actually the very first one that was important to me. And that was in the 80s. And then I wanted to show you a current artist I totally admire, and that is Anselm Kiefer. Mostly what he stands for and his whole philosophy behind his work. and also this whole German history that's behind it, which is important to me too. The German history, mostly World War II, or what led up to it. I went to, in the fall, I went to St. Louis for an overnight to see his exhibit there. And I must say, there were these gigantic pieces, I don't know, they're maybe 12 feet high or something. And I thought, well, that's not really necessary. But so I got away from that. But I still like all his work. At least when it can hang on a wall. They're still gigantic, but especially this piece, I'm so taken with it. And of course, he's into a lot of texture, as you probably know. Mr. Clay. And I knew a installer at the Hirshhorn years ago when Kiefer had his show there. I think it was in, I don't know, 2006 or something. And he said how it was an absolute nightmare to place his works because he has clay on there and steel and all that. And I never forgot that. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, and here I wanted to show you, here are 4 paintings that styles or subject matter that I did before I went into my figures in an environment. But this is maybe, I want to show you how it sort of developed. My paintings until 2022 were totally void of figures or anything like that. The closest I came was to it maybe a statue or an statues, or what do you call these things? But anyway. And I was very much, I work in series. So I did for a long time architecturally related paintings, mostly details. Portals were a big thing for me, ruins, maybe a pillar somewhere. I did that for a fairly long time. But at the same time, I also painted landscapes. So that was, all this maybe lasted 8 years or so. And then I got enamored with water, with oceans. And this was the first one. And I'm very fearful of high waves. So I might have tried to conquer my fear with this wave. And even while I was painting it, it was sort of scary in a way almost. And my other interest is vessels, boats, but everything is dilapidated. Also the building, I wouldn't paint a perfect yacht or something, or a perfect building. So that one, and then here is a painting from that time. And I placed the building, and one of the first where I placed the buildings in a landscape, fairly textured. And I wanted to quote from my artist statement about the use of my materials. So it says, I'm drawn to subjects with layers, either emotionally or actual layers through age or history. I try to convey this feeling through my application of materials on the canvas, such as modeling paste, leaves, soil, etc. Acrylic underpainting, mixed media like oils, charcoal, erasing and building up again. And I start with modeling paste, and then I put the soil in there, leaves and pieces of cotton, pieces of paper, basically everything. It's very randomly applied, which causes problems later on. If I want to, for example, to paint a face somewhere, and then a twig is right through the face or something like that. And the underpainting is either in red or gold. I have used other colors, but those two are prevalent. Because it's also the reason I do all that, because I can't paint on white. Of course I can, but I really don't like it. It's almost a physical thing. I have to have layers underneath, because maybe it's a metaphor for me because it's about life. Life is in layers, and all that. I guess I sort of try to show in my textures. And these are early nature close-ups, portraits of nature, I would call them. As you can see, I'm rather generic about my titles. I don't really, if it was up to me, everything would be untitled 1, 2, or 3, but it's a little hard in identifying later on if somebody asks about a painting. I used to go to Hunting Isle in South Carolina, which is a state park. I would go there every year to sort of recover from work. But I would read and hike and sketch. So I did quite a lot of, I didn't paint there, only sketched and took photographs. And I did quite a series of Hunting Isle paintings. Let me see. And this is one other sort of landscape. This is actually a skeleton of a yurt. This was in Uzbekistan, gorgeous deserts there. And I think I also used, yeah, here you can see I used quite a lot of texture. And this is a rather straightforward landscape. These are dunes in the Netherlands. I don't know if I mentioned it. No, I didn't. I paint when I paint, I have about 2 or 3, or maybe sometimes 4 paintings on the easels or that I'm working on. Because when I get stuck with one, to avoid overworking, I go to my other paintings. And then I got here, as you see, in my water period. This is a diptych. And I had a show a couple of years ago, always this water, all these oceans. And I have a very good friend who had trouble looking at them because he felt he was getting seasick. So I took it as a compliment, but it was actually a pretty interesting show because all this water, wild water around you. It was here. This is another one from that series. And here comes my boat in, my dilapidated sinking boat.
Tina, can I interrupt you and ask you, are they on canvas or do you paint on wood?
No, everything is canvas.
Okay.
Yeah. And I actually prefer paper, but there comes in with framing and all. So I used to do paper and then paste it on canvas, but that was too much. So I do canvas.
Thank you.
Yeah, and here are the landscapes where the water starts seeping in, the marshes. It's sort of developed, I think, after my big ocean paintings. And this is the very last painting without a figure or, a figure in there. This is one canvas, but I divided it in 2. And here we are. I did this waterscape. I was all enthusiastic about doing the waterscape, and all of a sudden it wasn't enough for me anymore. I needed more. I started experimenting with the bird. I had it on all different levels and I was very, very doubtful about it. It took me a long time to finally put it there. But that's basically how my figures in environment started. And then here's the actual figure. But this painting started out horizontally because I was going to paint this gorgeous submerged old boat in soil and mud. I had taken a photo of it. Well, of course, it didn't work at all, and it was on the easel for a long time. Then I turned it around and I started with the boat, just this boat. I still wanted the boat, but there was not an environment. It was just monochrome. It was, I think, a rusty color background. So I played with the boat. And then I started putting this figure in different spots, of course. And after that, I did this whole environment, the water, the sky, and there it was. And I was pleased with it. And here you see also a lot of, I think here the texture worked out real good, because these are all the straw strips and all. And here is actually a dried bunch of hydrangeas. And then this one came, again, that sort of, but I have to also tell you, I don't paint these figures or this. First of all, I'm not telling stories, I'm alluding to stories. And also the important thing for me is the painting. And then I start looking around for pictures. And these are all old photographs that I'm somehow connected to. But I'm attracted to the pose, or I'm attracted to the atmosphere. And I use fragments of photos. Even for landscapes, I use different sources. But I also invent environments. This one is invented. This the water and all that. I played around with it. But and also I have this other thing. I don't really want to tell you what to see, and I will never really do that when it's hanging somewhere. I'm not that interested in that. But for me, there is, of course, a story, and I am not always aware of the story while I'm painting. It mostly starts later, once the whole thing is there. And I thought, oh yeah, because in this case, my mother told me about this woman. So that comes back. And of course, at that point, it all adds for me. And this series of figures are all taken at the same day. And I call it, I assume it was a Sunday outing in 1943 at the Wannsee. And the Wannsee was a lake close to Berlin, or is a lake close to Berlin, a very loaded environment. Because in 1942, Heydrich, the Nazi, planned his and his cronies' final solution there. And it was somewhere, this is not the actual Wannsee, I call it the Wannsee, but so that is all things that I later on, it sort of comes together for me. And this woman, I think, was a friend or a neighbor of my mom. And at that moment, when they were on their outing, or in that time period, in summer of 43, her son was in a concentration camp because he was gay. So again, these are all things. And I'm very interested in history, and especially European history, but around that, the world, World War II. So, and it's all not that conscious when I start out doing these things, but later it all comes together for me personally. And this is also the figure from that outing, but this is a photo I took from Rock Creek Park, and I love the blue reflection. So I use actually a lot local environments. If I use, a source for it, but if not, then I invent them too, and I might combine. This is actually the whole photo that I painted. And this is a diptych, and here's a shepherd dog. And here I wanted to show you when I first paint the whole landscape or the waterscape, and then I decide on the figures. But I don't always right away know how to place them. So I make a rough sketch and roughly colored in, and then I cut them out. Then I start moving them like paper dolls on the canvas, so I can sort of see where I want to eventually place them. So I thought I'd show you a picture of that. And here is I never worked larger than 48 by 36, but this is that series, and it's Greenbelt. I call it Greenbelt. It's not Greenbelt, but I was born there in Berlin, Greenbelt. And here I started placing the figures. I also think I sort of paint in between, you know, the in-between states. And I also don't want to be specific what time, let's say the 60s or the 30s. I want to keep that all up in the air. I don't want to be too specific in the setting. For example, I would never paint contemporary figures. I mean, from now, you know. I don't know. I just don't, it doesn't appeal to me. Here's also a lot of text. The upper part was from an old, very vague photograph from Lake Needwood, I think it's called, in Montgomery County. And this is invented. And this whole environment is invented. That's in that series. And here's another one in that series. You still see a little water. I have to put it in somewhere. And the birches. So I invented that. Well, I just did birches because I like birches. And then later I realized, much later actually, why birches? Why always birches? In 2008, I had an artist residency in Eastern Germany. And it was a base cow, and it was a place between Berlin and the Polish border. And I would rent a bike almost every day and go out and sketch. And one day I was riding through these woods. I mean, really high woods of birches, but also woods of pine trees, but really dark. You know, you hardly could see through them. I mean, they were all neatly in rows. And very quiet. You know, was probably only one out there or another person biking or driving a car on the main road. But then I realized that in January 1945, the Russian army came right through that area, you know, from north to south, basically on the east, to conquer Berlin, which is a big thing for me. I wasn't there. I'm not that old, but my mother was there. And actually also my father, but they weren't together at that point. So it really became a big thing, because in old documentaries, you do see them, you know, this whole army, tanks and walking, and they go, you know, approaching Berlin. And of course, I wouldn't call it anything like that, but this is sort of the story for me again. This is also a local environment. It might be a Jack Bay area in, I think it's PG County also. And these are two really old paintings, as you can see, from 1984, 42 years ago. And I just, since in between that time and 2022, I didn't paint figures, except when I had to do illustrations. But so I sort of wanted to show you how things come together again at some point. And this was a good friend of mine, Raoul, and he actually was wearing this sort of 1600s outfit. He did have a banana in his hand. And here's my mask, and that must be Ensor, James Ensor related, because I would put masks everywhere. But I find it interesting that I would paint within an environment. It was always enclosed. I never would have painted in a lens outside. But I always did this window. I was intrigued by that, and I think that came because of the Renaissance portraits, where they have these beautiful backgrounds of sea or landscapes. But he was from Venezuela, so this was a part of a beach in Venezuela. And this was 1984, but he had died the year before, in 83, one of the first AIDS victims. And here was another painting from that time. But yeah, I must have been intrigued by the dress, I think, and the toy lamp on little wheels. But these paintings have no texture, anything, are painted on white, so the classic way. All that I developed much later, after 96. And the artists among you probably will know about Edward Muybridge, the photographer who published these books in 1888 or something about all these figures and animals in movement, in motion. And I have a couple of those, these series of photographs. They're still in print, actually. So this is a Muybridge figure, but I think that might even be from Muybridge, but I used Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens, sort of. It's based on a photo from there. This is painted on a real old painting of mine. As I told you, I can't paint on white, and I love to paint on old paintings. Sometimes it's a little tricky because other people would say, God, why did you paint over that? But here we are. And this is the first time that a figure comes out of the frame. I like to normally place him in the middle of the landscape. Not in the middle, but a little farther away. And I put these ribbons in. I don't know why. I do it in other painting too that you will see. And I had to put my little boat in. I think I could have placed the dog a little lower. And this is also an invented or a combination marsh landscape. And this figure is based on a photo of my mother, also in either 1943 or 44. And I just took the figure. I didn't take the whole photo, obviously. And she is on there, it looks like on a roof sort of thing, and damaged steel beams. And this photo was taken after she was bombed out of her house. Apparently she was bombed out 3 times of different houses. Not house, I guess apartments. And on the photo, this is where she's sort of cleaning herself up, like we have a name for that, but freshening up. And she's actually smiling in that photo or laughing, because I guess when you're young, things are maybe more of an adventure. I don't know. But also what struck me always about those type of photos, that life just went on, right? You go on outings and you keep on living. Well, you have to. And that was another, I became aware of that a long time ago, but that war, I always, as a kid, saw the war like this dark, gray 5-year era, but that's not the case, of course. And it also became clear to me because I grew up in the Netherlands, but I of course heard the German stories from their side of the war through my mom, when the Russians came and the bombings. And but then I also heard the part of the Dutch people. They were occupied by the Germans, and also awful things. So it really, I think, sort of made me in a way that I'm totally anti-war. there's no reason for me for war. So that I learned that as a young person, or that became clear to me, because all sides involved, it's a terrible thing. And here, the dream, it was an actual dream I had in 1988. And I was dreaming about this gorilla standing up in a meadow, and I was terrified. And then I looked again, and he was this gorilla wearing a baby bonnet and a rattle. To me, it seemed like it said, the dream meant like, see, I'm not dangerous at all. I mean, I'm just like a big baby. So the dream always stuck with me. 2 years ago, I decided I'm going to paint it, but I couldn't pull off a standing gorilla. It looked really weird, so I made him sit down. And I did. This is an environment of my imagination. And I put here also a Muybridge figure in from those motion books, and I gave her a dress. And this one was originally a vertical big ocean, sort of yellowish. But after a couple of years, I didn't like that anymore either. And I turned it around, horizontal. Oh no, first, before I did that, I did like the ocean in itself. I tried to paint a figure rising out of the waves. Well, that was rather tacky, of course. So I turned it around and decided on the three figures. And here you still see a little bit underpainting of the ocean. A lot of textures in this one. Can't see it that well, but and I needed something here. So I first painted the lion. Well, that didn't work. I did somebody on horseback from the back. That didn't work. So finally it became this old dilapidated boat. And this one, first of all, I have to tell you, this is the only one without any texture, without any underpainting, totally the old-fashioned way. I started with burnt sienna. I think I just wanted to try it again. And I'm very proud of the title Kismet, because I'm not good with titles. I'm not that interested in it. But while I was painting this came up. Because this is my mother at about 15 years old in Germany. And I must have been a carnival or something. And on this thing, it says Haupttreffer, which means first prize in German. So I always liked this photo, and I put some ribbons in there. And this is a photo of my dad, I guess around 16 years old, but worlds apart, literally. And so I put him in this painting, and it's also almost the only one where I have the figures are the main thing in the painting. The bulldog is mostly for compositional reasons. And they had a very unhappy marriage. They divorced after 11 years, and here I put them together. And I don't know if they're happy about it, but maybe they're okay, since they always stayed friends. And this is that very first sort of waterscape where the birds ended up. And I wanted to do that waterscape again, sort of. It's not totally the same. And put the leopard in. I like painting animals. And I liked the way he looked back. And I put this figure there. And here we are with another story. First of all, Tempo Dulu means old times in Indonesia. And this is my Indonesian grandmother, who I never met because she died when my dad was 7 or 8, although the dying aspect might not be true, because these days, I might have to tell you first, of course, Indonesia used to be the Dutch East Indies and a colony of the Netherlands. And my Dutch grandfather went there, I think in 1898. And so then he got involved, all of them, I think, got involved with native women, but they barely or never married them, and became their concubines and their housekeepers. And that's this woman, my grandmother. And my father is a product out of that relationship. And so they told my dad that he had died when he was 7 or 8, but it might have been much more tragic than that, because now it's more known that back then, you know, the men, in this case my grandfather, they would send these women away back to their villages, you know, inland, because they married a Dutch woman, you know. My father stayed with that family though, but that's the tragic part. If she was sent away and her little son was still with my grandfather, so it's a rather tragic thing. I'm not, you know, my cousin and I are not 100% sure, but we both think it's likely that that's the real story. And here he has that funky outfit again. I put this sort of exotic umbrella, you know, this Asian umbrella in there. But I needed also a tropical environment. So here I used the palm trees of Hunting Isle and the beach. And I put a little monkey in for, you know, again, for compositional purposes. I also, it seems that I never put figures really together next to each other. I always want some distance between all the figures. And here is the second Tempo Dulu. And I heard the story that when they lived on the island of Sumatra, my grandfather and my father, and I think it was the new family already, close to the city of Medan, not in the city, but it wasn't unusual that a tiger would walk into the yard, which happened, and my grandfather shot the tiger. And I have a copy of a photo that this tiger is hanging upside down on a pole, and the native servants are, you know, obviously carrying him away. So that's where the tiger comes in this painting. And this is my dad. I needed, again, a tropical environment, so I think I worked pretty well up here. But only in the last 2 weeks, I realized that the lower part is a rather Western setting. I think, I mean, to me, now I can't unsee it. But then I thought it might be, it's appropriate because he came from 2 cultures. This is another one from that time. This is a total invented environment. I did it all with oil stick, which I enjoy because you can't get too much into detail. And these 3 figures are a picture from that time in the old Dutch East Indies, people playing instruments. And then I wanted to start, as you notice, my paint, you know, here, the smaller ones I started doing too. I needed some more movement in my paintings. I thought I have a tendency, well, I like it that way, but to paint stillness rather. But I didn't mind some movement. So here's one. And this is even smaller, 9 by 12. And these are painted on really old paintings with a thick layer of paint and texture. So it was really hard to get some detail in, but on the other hand, that might be a good thing. Seems a little looser. And when I was visiting the Anson Kiefer exhibit in St. Louis, I had some time, and behind the museum is this zoo. And here was this orangutan. And I think there was a plaque that said her name was Lola, and she was 60 years old. And I don't know, I was so taken with her, just sitting there contemplating her hands. And yeah, this lonely old ape. And then actually, recently I looked her up if she was still alive or something. And then it turned out she was born in the Netherlands. So always these circles coming through. Here I was actually looking for zebras. This was in Uganda a long time ago. And I liked the picture, so I wanted to do something with it. Here's only modeling paste. I don't think there's other texture in this painting because it was painted on top of an older painting, so I didn't do the heavy texture then. This painting is new or fairly new, November or December last year. And I had been to Scotland 2 years ago, and I of course loved it, but I tried to create a Scottish environment and put the three figures in. This is also an old painting from 2017 from Lake Artemisia in Prince George's County, close to where I live. And I did this, I called it Summer Rain. I didn't, until this year, actually, I didn't like it. Also, I decided I didn't like it, and I wanted to paint people on stilts in there. So, and here you see the figure that I had, that I had first made a paper doll of, moving around, and vaguely put in a second figure, and I started here third. But then I got the idea, I want to do this higher horizon like I did in that very early one. But there it worked because it was a square format. So two artist friends of mine, I asked them their opinion, and they also thought it didn't work well. But here I have a third one. Sorry. But then I finally ended up this way. But the problem was I had to get rid of that horizon, and there was so many old layers of paint, and I had to, I used steel wool a lot to wash it off with turpentine. So finally I got it. I think I lowered the horizon a bit, and then I put this person hanging in a tube, and I increased the branch. I did more branches all over it. I just wanted to show you sort of the development of that particular painting. This is also a recent, so that previous one, I think I finished it in April. This one I finished somewhere in January, February, a new one, just three little German boys from the 1920s. Again, an old painting from 2017, which I decided I don't like anymore, a diptych, as you can see. And I will show you, this is far from finished. I'm in the middle of working with this, but I wanted to show you what how it developed. I wanted to keep a yellow field, of course I didn't. And these were also cutouts first, placing them all, placing them all over the painting. But these three are all related to me. Even here in that hot air balloon, there are two figures that are related to me, except this one. This came from a really old 1910 postcard. People were sending these cards in these beautiful sepia colors, and there was this pose, and I thought that sort of worked in that corner. And that was it. And we keep going and going and going, never ends. But I would like to end with another quote by Jake Berthaud. An eye not told what to see sees more. And that was it.
Thank you. Tinam, I just wanted, this is wonderful. I wanted to ask you to be sure I understood correctly, first of all. You showed us a progression of some of the paintings before you changed them, correct?
Yes,
In the last couple of...
Yeah, the last two.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I was thinking, oh, the interesting painting, and then the next one
Yeah,
was
well, that's why
over
I'm
that
sort
one.
of notorious for that, and because then I just decide to paint over it.
Good
And
for you. Wow. They're beautiful. They have it beautiful and eerie, melancholy. Don't don't they? And I
yeah,
love your idea of taking the old images and incorporating them because it really, oh, it makes them so meaningful.
yeah, I think so. For me, it does, and like I said, I'm very much into atmosphere and mood. That might be the main thing for
For
me.
sure. Yeah.
And well, and it comes out. I mean, it's not like it
Right.
just happens eventually. Yeah.
Would you say that you're a surrealist?
No,
Uh,
no,
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 because
no,
some of
no.
them border or are surreal, right?
Yeah, no, no. I know. I like little, but because surrealism is too much in your face for my taste.
Oh, I see. So you want to be
So I don't
subtle.
want to be so definite.
Yes, got it.
And I think painters like Peter Doig and Neo Rauch, that appeals to me, because they have weird things in there or unexpected fragments in there, and I enjoy that. And I also enjoy a lot outside of art because it's so original and true and authentic. But I guess we never can go back there because when you have some art education, it's hard to do that. But or it wouldn't be authentic. But so yeah, and in general, I loved George Innes, for example, the zonalists, because of all that. It's not clear. It's sort of it's dreamy, and it could, yeah, and it's very much up to you as a viewer how you feel about the painting, what you see, and that's what attracts me in other people's work too.
Wow, good for you. This is
Thank you.
wonderful. It gives me so many ideas too. It's inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
Can you
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit more about your process of creating a background? Do you sometimes put in the molding paste that you said you don't know
Yeah.
exactly how you're going to use it, right? Like how
Yes,
what you're going
well,
to paint.
I smear with a palette knife, a big one, the
Yeah.
construction. I smear it on the canvas, and then I just start putting the texture in, the
Right.
pieces of sand or twigs or soil.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you because
I sort of push it
some of
in
it
there, but it's random, which
right.
causes problems at times.
Right. And
Because
without knowing necessarily what you're going to paint.
Oh, yeah. But I do, in general, when I start painting, I have an idea what I want
Right.
to do.
Right.
But I do several ones at a time, or go back and forth between them. And then I do the underpainting, and it's acrylic because it dries faster.
Right, fast.
But then I must say, putting oil on that is not always easy because it doesn't absorb. And but again, I
Do you
still enjoy
gesso on top of the molding paste sometimes or no?
Pardon?
Do you put gesso on top of the molding
No,
paste?
no.
No, because it might absorb a little more, but
Yeah, right.
you
You're
never
right.
know.
Yeah. No,
Right.
yeah, you're right. No, I never do. Yeah, and
And
both
okay.
are plastics, of course. Modeling paste is plastic,
Right.
and so is acrylic. But
And so it's gesso eventually, unless you use the oil gesso, right?
yeah,
But no, they look gorgeous.
thank you
I
very
don't
much.
want to monopolize any other thoughts. It was wonderful to see the
Thank you.
progression. And like you said, Ella, I love the figures when you introduce them. They're so harmonious with the landscapes. So the landscapes in a way prepared us for the presence of the figures.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Then I had a question kind of about how, I mean, how much do you feel like you put your own, I think Mariana called it melancholy in terms of like a mood for the paintings. And I definitely felt that way almost all the way through your talk that even in the Merrymaker series where they're all wearing masks, it's almost like when happiness is behind a mask. Do you find yourself putting yourself into these paintings or kind of trying to tell a story about a time in the past where maybe all the men have gone off to war and it's just these females in the landscape? Like, how do you put yourself into these paintings, or is it more narrative from afar?
No, it's not per se narrative, and I guess every painting for everybody is autobiographical. Sorry, but it doesn't. It's nothing is conscious, and I happen to be attracted to this also in other people's paintings. And so, yeah, it somehow comes out. And I guess when you're older, it comes all a little bit more together because when you're younger, you're much more experiencing with your work. Well, I still do a little bit, but at least I know what I'm attracted to and what I want to show. And I think another thing, my generation grew up, at least in Europe, with this whole World War II behind us because our parents would always refer to it somehow, and yeah, it's although it's not like I'm this melancholic person, schlepping around because most people would think the opposite of me, but it's there. I mean, I'm attracted to all kinds of in all different ways, a melancholy or an ambiguity or in a way I always think how can you not, because there's so much depth to life or to life, there are all these things there, but again it's for everybody different. But it's certainly not that I set out to sort of it happens because it's in you somewhere, an unconscious level or subconscious level.
I was particularly attracted also to your onesie series because
Yeah.
I thought at first when you talked about the hunting island,
Yeah.
and and I looked it up real quick to see it's gorgeous. I had never known about that location, but at the same time, the title is the lake that the final solution, there's a mansion there. I saw a picture.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for the people who don't have direct relatives who grew up during World War II, it may be worth seeing that. I think the movie is called The Final Solution.
Yeah.
And
Actually, there's a really good documentary on BBC Global, and I watched it yesterday, and it's about
really,
Hitler and how it came to be. And yeah, well, anyway, and I'm interested in it anyways.
oh my God. I would love to see the documentary. BBC, I don't think I have BBC
Yeah, I
Global.
signed up free for a free trial.
Oh, okay, good for you. And
Yeah.
the movie that recreates, I don't know how many of you may have seen it, but it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I
It just
saw. Yeah.
creeps into your soul as
Yeah.
people are discussing this final solution, which is
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
could happen anytime, anywhere.
Exactly. That's the point. Yes. Yes.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And yet I thought it was a Native American name that you had used, the onesie. And then I looked
No.
up and it's this German
Lake.
lake,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the duality of that is
Right.
unbelievable. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for our artist today?
I have one question. Back to art and art making. You talk about your inspirations. You talk about using photographs, but you also mentioned that you sketch. You do sketches outside, and I never actually saw any. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yes, I do a lot of sketching, and especially outside. But I mostly see it as an exercise, for seeing and to work from life, which is important too. And but you should come by. I have loads of sketches, loads of books.
I wonder why you never include such work
Yeah,
in.
I probably should because I did also the last years again. I did lots of sketches with the figures, and I wished I could paint like that because I'm so much looser with sketches, and maybe it's the paper because I do like working on paper. And yeah, no, I definitely have to sketch. Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Maybe I incorporate it at some point.
Yeah.
And would you tell us about your exhibit and how long it goes?
Oh, that's only until June 3rd.
Oh,
And it's here in Greenbelt. The art gallery person put up a wonderful show. She really did, Nicole de Wal. But shortly before that, I had a show at Portico in February. It's always all or nothing, right? From now on, I have nothing, but then and then in the fall, I had another show at the German Heritage Museum. But yeah, so and it is, utmost importance, my art. I mean, it's life enriching and life saving, and yeah, I'm glad that I feel I have a rich life doing art and stuff. Yeah,
Very busy life actually, because
yeah.
you live a lot, and you are very productive. You
You think so? I think you are productive. I always think you are so productive. You are. No, but that's a good thing to know other artists because to me it's also encouraging, especially since we're a little older, and it's good to see other people my age that are still very active and still creating and coming up with new things. And
yes. You can also see it's a healing journey.
yeah, yeah, it is definitely. Yeah.
I'm also very interested in this, after a while, rejecting some painting and painting over it. It's kind of very.
Well, some of my friends, artist friends, they say, "Gosh, you painted over another one," and it's also I don't know. It's funny because at that point, at first I might think when I let's say start painting over that painting, I still think I want to incorporate some of the old stuff, right? And the underneath, the part of the yellow field, and then I keep going, and I say, "Oh, what the hell? I don't care. I don't care anymore about that previous painting." While I am very attached to my paintings in a way, that's why it's sort of interesting that I do that. But I wouldn't do it to a painting that I really think is worthwhile. I mean, it's to me those paintings became less interesting, or I'm not totally happy with them. It's not like I would paint over everything, but you know.
Yeah, because
So
they are very personal, your painting, your art. And
yeah,
it is like at some point rejecting yourself, right?
maybe on my previous stage in life,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
No, but I have. Well, again, it's not like right away. Oh, let me take that painting and paint it over. I have thought
Yeah.
about it, and also then I might need that diptych.
Right.
Yeah, I want, and I don't want to go out and buy one or something. Well, it's not that strong, but all these things come in there. And I have so many paintings. I mean, what am I going to do? But I have a lot of, yeah, sometimes I have maybe two paintings underneath, underneath the current one.
Any final questions for our artist today? Well, I will thank you so much for your talk today. It was enlightening and a beautiful work. And I mean, I definitely couldn't stop creating stories in my own head. And it's just such an honor to hear about your work and learn your story. I want to remind everybody that we still have for this week and next weekend an incredible artwork in the Stone Tower Studio, second floor. Our visiting artist, Elaine Wilson, has her landscapes and exhibition, construction, deconstruction. So come take a look. I think she's actually planning on being here tomorrow for anyone who's interested in meeting her again and learning about her workshop that she's teaching next weekend. In 2 weeks, we have the artist Shaheen Talishkan, hosted by Valerie Thurberg. So we have some really cool people, and our schedule for the year is almost full. So I'm pretty excited about that. But take a look at our upcoming artist in 2026 before I even have to start thinking about 27 because we're keeping this going, right, Mariana? But thank you again to everybody who
I
did
think
our
so.
talk today. Yeah, as long as we're alive,
I
still
had to
kicking.
think for a moment.
It's like, oh my
Thank you
gosh.
very much.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
hopefully in a couple of days, you'll see the video also.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. It was such a joy to host you. Thank you. And thank you, Ella, for bringing
Thank
her to
you.
our attention. It's great.
Thanks, Ella. I will see
Have a
you.
wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I can't believe it's Memorial Day. It looks like fall.
Yeah.
The weather is getting better, so we can.
Yeah, a little cooler was helpful, though. Thank you again.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.